Hello, welcome back to Lady Love Said Reads. My name is Jessica and this is a recent reads video. I did not do an August or September wrap-up, so that's basically what I'm doing in this video. And I didn't take the time to do my stats. Honestly, I've kind of stopped doing stats. I got lost in the numbers at some point. Things weren't adding up right, so I wasn't going to go back and redo it all. I'm just going to start fresh in January. We'll be fine. So I am going to draw the books that I read out of my apothecary jar here and do what I usually do with my monthly wrap-ups and play MASH. If you didn't know, MASH is a numbers game that we played in the 90s when I was a kid growing up, and it basically is a way to predict your future. How I play it with books is I look at house, and for house I examine which of the 4 books I draw, because I draw 4, which of the 4 books I want to be in the setting of. I look at romantic partner and see, which of the 4 books I would pick a romantic partner from. I look at family or friend group, which family or friend group would I want to be a member of. And then I take a look at career and see which career of the 4 books I draw would I want to pursue, basically. So I'm just going to go ahead and start drawing. Again, these are all from August and September. And we'll just enjoy this part of my wrap-ups. There's quite a few books here. I don't know how many exactly, but there's enough. I do have my Goodreads pulled up because I'm probably going to need some reminders of like what I rated some of these. All right. Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. Nomadland by Jessica Bruder. We got 2 Jessicas, so that's cool. Solitaire by Alice Oseman. The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. I need to look up my star ratings, as suspected. Oh, this is actually kind of difficult, because one of these books I really didn't like. Nomadland by Jessica Bruder. This is nonfiction investigative journalism, and it is about people who get rid of living in houses or apartments and they live out of their vehicles, whether it is a camper van or just a regular vehicle like a car or a truck or an RV, and they travel around the United States doing temporary jobs, and how there's an entire culture built around this. I loved this book. It's probably the best, if not one of the best nonfiction that I've read in 2023. I bought a copy of it, but I'm too lazy to go downstairs and grab it. And I gave this book 5 stars. For MASH, I would definitely pick setting because it would be really interesting to live that life for a while. Not permanently, I don't think, for me, but for a while. Well, maybe permanent. We'll just say for a while. The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. This is a thriller, and I didn't like this book. I gave this 2 stars. What happens in this is this family buys a house, and it's right next to a cliff where people attempt to unalive themselves pretty regularly. And so the woman's husband tries to intervene in one particular situation and fails, and the woman succeeds in jumping, and it turns out that their family is actually really entangled with this person, and the wife is unsure about whether or not her husband might have actually pushed her off the cliff, and that's the setting of it. What I really disliked about this book was how Hepworth used mental illness and depicted it as a reason for people to engage in like criminal behavior, basically. It just really was an old-fashioned stereotype and depiction of mental illness, and I just was not here for that. And I gave it 2 stars. For setting, or not setting, for MASH, I really don't want to do anything in this book. I don't want to be in the setting, have any of the jobs or romantic or family or anything like that. I just didn't like the book. But with the 4 of them, if I had to pick, it would be romantic partner with the wife, because she's very, very loyal, and she actually does have a lot of integrity. And yeah, I mean, that's what I'll do for that one. Don't recommend that one. Solitaire by Alice Oseman. I buddy read this with my friend Chelsea, and I'll link you to her channel down below. I can't remember what we buddy read this for. I think it was possibly a Lair readathon with the Vamps, or maybe even Jan Agaton's Full Moon Book Club readathon. I can't remember exactly, but we did buddy read it. And it's about Tori, who, if you are familiar with the Heartstopper series, Tori is Charlie's older sister, and it's her story. Tori is very misanthropic and just kind of depressed, and it's about how there's this like group that creates a website called Solitaire, and they start pulling pranks like at schools and other places, and she's trying to figure out, you know, who is this, because a lot of the pranks are centered around her, and it's clear that it's somebody that knows her. So it's very interesting setup, and I thought it was a really, really good depiction of just depression and teenage angst, and I loved it. I mean, I love Alice Oseman. I feel like Alice Oseman can do no wrong for me. And so I ended up giving this 4 stars. I think Chelsea gave it 4 stars as well. For MASH, I would pick Friend Group, because the friend group in this Heartstopper world is just the best. They're just the best. Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. This is a thriller. And it's actually about a mass casualty event. We'll put it that way. And the main character has survived this event, and it's basically sort of goes dual timeline from the build up to the event and her involvement and what had happened, and then to what's currently going on in her life and how she's still struggling to cope. And I thought this was a really good exploration of this kind of a topic. Sometimes it gets criticism because it centers a lot of rich people, but honestly, rich people is where this kind of event happens. So that made sense to me, and I didn't have an issue with it. So I really liked this book. I thought it was well done. I gave it 4 stars. For setting, I chose career. The main character is a journalist or a writer. I could do that. Do our next 4. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Clarissa Broadbent. Those are 2 very different books. Bloodmarked by Tracy Dion. And Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. Okay, let's start with Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This is a really interesting thriller. I gave it 4 stars, and it's actually a time travel story. So what happens is, on a certain day, something happens in this woman's life with her family. And then the next day is actually 1 day before the event. And the day after that is 2 days before the event. And so she keeps going backwards in time until she figures out what she needs to do to change whatever it is that happened and stop the event, basically. And what starts out as like this kind of ominous story with some really interesting twists turns out to be just the sweetest resolution. Like, it's just so sweet and heartwarming at the end. And I thought that that was like really talented writing, to take something that initially feels like so like, this is bad news, and turn it into something just heartwarming. So I really liked this story. I gave it 4 stars. For MASH, I picked Romantic Partner. And if you've read this book, you'll know why. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. This is a middle grade classic. I did not like it. I gave it 2 stars. This book didn't age well at all. The writer attempts to address things like, you know, gender and romantic relationships when you're around that middle grade age, and changing bodies and things like that. And it just is so cisgender heteronormative. There's way better stuff out there now. Don't recommend this book to anybody. Like I said, I can see how it would have been important for its time, but it did not age well. Like, not at all. So I gave it 2 stars. And for MASH, I picked Job. I'd be a teacher. Bloodmarked by Tracy Deonn, 5 stars. This is the sequel to Legendborn in the Legendborn Cycle series. And it's about Bree, who gets into early admittance college and discovers that there's magic and a secret society devoted to magic. Lots of things unravel. I loved Legendborn, and I like Bloodmarked even better than Legendborn. It is just such a well-plotted story. I love the characters. I love the relationships. I love the action. It just is so good. Probably the best YA fantasy that I have read in a very long time. I cannot wait for the next book. They just announced that the next book, Oathbound, is going to be coming out in 2025. That's such a long wait. But yeah, 5 stars for this. For MASH, I picked Friend Group because the friend group is stellar. They've got each other's backs. They all have specific talents that all contribute to the cohesion of the whole. And gosh, if you had to go through what these characters are going through, you want to be with the people they're with. Okay, and the last of this 4 is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Clarissa Broadbent. This is a romantasy, so it's a fantasy romance, and it's about vampires, and there's like a trial. So this woman is raised by a vampire even though she is a human, and she's entering a trial because she wants to win the trial and get blessed with the ability to become a vampire herself so that she can go find her human family. And along the process, she falls in love, of course. So she falls in love with someone who is in the trial for her. There is a twist at the end. I'm really excited to read the next book. I don't know when I'll get to it, hopefully soon. But I gave this 4 stars. There's like a point in the middle where it kind of dragged, and that's a pretty common criticism of it. But stick with it because the ending is, you know, it pays off in the end for sure. Pretty good world building. Okay writing, you know, in a romantasy, the writing is not the main point of the book, right? The main point of the book is how the relationship develops, how the world building is, what the action is like, and all of that stuff was pretty good. So I gave it 4 stars. And for MASH, I picked Setting. I couldn't remember what I was left with here. Yeah, I picked Setting because this is a pretty cool world that Clarissa Broadbent has built. I would want to be a vampire in this setting. That'd be cool. On to the next 4. Radical Inclusion by David Monina Singh. Mooncakes by Wendy Xu and Suzanne Walker. I've got it right here, so I was looking at the authors. Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. And The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. There's another book. This is another round where, like, there's a book that I want to not do anything in. Because I didn't like it at all. So we'll start with that one, Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. This is literary fiction, historical fiction, and it's about a young boy in India who gets sold into indentured servitude, and basically like his story. And I didn't like this book. I really liked it when it was this boy's story growing up, but then it kind of just goes off the rails, and there's like different points of view and different things that are happening, and the pacing gets thrown off at the end, and I was just like, it just became just a mess. Like, it was just a mess. I didn't enjoy it. There's really nothing in the MASH setting, friend, romance, anything like that that I would want to do, but of the 4 that I pulled, I would say job. I'd maybe be a restaurant or cafe owner from this story, because there's a lot of different like restaurants and cafes that come up in this, and sure. Yeah, I gave that book 2 stars, by the way. Mooncakes. This was a reread. It's by Wendy Xu and Suzanne Walker, and it's a graphic novel, kind of a cottagecore, witchy graphic novel, and it's a sapphic queer story, and it's not sapphic, it's a queer story, because the one character is non-binary. And it's just the sweetest, coziest little story. It was a reread. I rate it 4 stars because I want there to be just a little bit more substance in this story, but it's one of my favorite graphic novels ever. So do what you will with that rating, and I will reread it anytime I just need something cozy. The illustrations are so cozy, and so for MASH I picked Setting because the setting is just one character, her aunties own a magical bookstore. Let me find a panel that has the bookstore. Here we go. Like, Oh my gosh. How could you not want to be in that setting? So that's Mooncakes. I read this. I do think, yeah, what did I read this for? I reread it for Jan's full moon readathon in August. Radical Inclusion by David Moninas Singay. This is a nonfiction about radical inclusion. So how do we go about actually being an inclusive person? And it tells the story of how he and his community, I don't remember, I feel terrible for this. I don't remember exactly where he was from, but it was a country where pregnant teenage girls were not allowed to go to school. And so he was working to change that law, and he talks about how he actually went about doing that, because he was able to get it changed so that pregnant girls could go to school and finish their education. And he talked about the steps that he took. And what I really liked about this was that he actually gives you like some action steps you can apply. It's not just pie in the sky, oh, we should include everybody kind of writing. It's like that, but then here's how we actually do it. And loved it. I'm using this at work as part of a research project that I'm working on. Like, it is very, very good if this is a topic area that you're interested in. I gave it 5 stars. For MASH, I picked friend group because I would love to have a circle of friends as pragmatic and group of friends with so much integrity and compassion as David has. The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. This is an adult thriller, and it's about 2 writers that are they were really good friends and then had a falling out, and they both get accepted into this writing retreat being hosted by a writer that has kind of a gothic cult following. And something go down at this retreat. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. It was good, but it felt to me like it could have been more. Like there could have been so much more. So much more discussion of different concepts. I think this would have been a better book if it was longer. It's a fairly short read at under 300 pages. It would have been nice if it was longer and kind of fleshed out some ideas a little better, fleshed out some character backstories a little bit better. And some parts of it felt rushed just to get to a conclusion. I really wanted to love it. I did really like the gothic vibes, and some parts of it felt like one of my favorite books of all time, which is Nightfall by Marisha Pessl. Kind of had that same sense of like, okay, this writer that's hosting the retreat is like this mysterious artistic person, and kind of like the film director in Nightfall. Only it was like Nightfall, the diet version, you know what I mean? It lacked so much substance and so much development. And so this was a 3-star read for me. I really wanted it to be a 5-star, but it was a 3-star read. And for MASH, I picked Job. Yeah, I picked Job of these 4 because writer. Next round. We're coming up to the end here, so hang with me. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. And you know, we've only got 2 left, so we're going to call these wild cards. Oh no, I had Riley Sager in there twice, so I just have 1 left. Nightfall by Penelope Douglas. That will be the wild card. So the wild card can be any of the 4. Okay, so... hard round, actually. They always feel like a hard round, to be honest. Let's start with The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is an adult thriller, and it's about an actress who has a drinking problem, so her mother sends her to their lake house to sober up. And at the lake house, she uses binoculars to spy on her neighbors across the lake. She becomes friends with a woman who lives across the lake. And there's something shady going on, something fishy, if you will. So this had an interesting twist at the end. I did not expect Riley Sager to go where they go with this, but I loved it. Some people hated it. I loved it. I loved that they went there with this story. It was still a 3-star read, right? Because 3-star for me isn't a bad rating. 3 stars like, hey, it was entertaining, not super memorable. right? A good time pass. And this was definitely a good time pass. I had a good time reading it, and there's nothing particularly wrong with it that I found. It just didn't, blow me out of the water. Like all my leg puns. So I gave it 3 stars, and this was a tough one. Of the 4 that I have here, I was left with romantic partners, so that's what this has to be for MASH. But I don't know who I would want to, romance in this story. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. This is nonfiction self-help. I did really enjoy this book. This book had some parts in it where it felt very heteronormative white male bro tone. You know what I mean? Like that bro tone. The advice in here I felt was actually pretty applicable, and one of the things that I really took away from it that I still have been thinking about was this concept of choosing how you want to suffer, right? Whenever we're picking like a career path or a hobby or anything like that, we always think of all the good things first. Like if you're going to be a musician, you always think, oh, I get to be creative, I get to perform, I get to meet new people, I get to travel, right? We think of all the good things, but we don't immediately think of the suffering. So if you're a musician, you also have to travel on a bus and be stinky and dirty and eat road trip food and be exhausted all the time. And your income isn't super stable until you get a record deal, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get a record deal, right? So he talks about how like you have to pick the path where you're okay with suffering through the suffering in order to get to the good. Because what happens so often for people is they'll pick a path and discount the suffering involved, and then when it gets hard, they give it up, right? Because they haven't considered what they are willing to suffer for. And I thought that was a really like interesting and unique way to conceptualize and think about making a decision in terms of something that you do or don't want to take on. So I gave this book 4 stars. For MASH, I picked friend group because I would like a friend group that would consider things about their life. I like friends who are always looking to grow, so, self-helpy. I like friends who are thinking about bigger picture things. The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. This is an adult thriller, and it is a retelling of Jane Eyre that focuses on his wife, right? That's like basically held prisoner. And I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was a fun ride. I've read a couple of Rachel Hawkins' other works, and I would say that this is my least favorite of the ones that I've read. My most favorite would be Reckless Girls. But it was still a fun time. It's an interesting retelling. A lot of people really dislike the way that Hawkins tackled the retelling. I liked it. I didn't have an issue with how she approached the retelling. I just thought it was just, a standard thriller, kind of like House Across the Lake. It was popcorn lit. It was sheer entertainment. Nothing that's going to be too memorable 10 years from now. So for MASH, I picked Job because the main character is a dog walker. Ha! How fun is that? Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. This was This was a manga that I read because I am very close to being finished with the manga series I'm working on, which is Promised Neverland. So I'm kind of trying to figure out what's the next manga I want to read. And this was not it. So this is a story about 2 characters who are trans, and they have not transitioned yet. And they one day wake up and they've switched bodies. So like the girl has switched bodies with the boy has switched bodies with the girl, so they're now the gender that they want to be. And I didn't think this story was handled very well. Like, it did not handle that discussion well. And I think there might be some cultural differences that I'm not catching on to. And I don't know, it just made me uncomfortable. It just made me uncomfortable because I don't think it handled the topic of being trans effectively or sensitively or any of those things. Will not be continuing that series, and I gave it 2 stars. For MASH, what did I pick for MASH? I guess it would have to be setting, wouldn't it? It'd be interesting to swap bodies with anybody, really, and live in someone else's shoes for a day. So I think that's why I picked setting. Then the wild card, Nightfall by Penelope Douglas. This is the last book in the Devil's Night series. I finally finished it. There are a couple novellas I still need to read, but This is by far my favorite dark romance series of all time. And this is Will's story. And it just, I mean, it's so good. So Will is at this prison for rich kids who are embarrassing their family or causing their family scandal. And the prison is like this really beautiful mansion. They have all their needs attended to, but there's no security on the premises. So the prisoners can get up to some shenanigans. And, well, Emery, the female protagonist, the heroine, somehow ends up getting smuggled into this prison. And it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's such a good conclusion to this story arc. I loved it. I loved it. I did give it 4 stars, and I can't tell you off the top of my head right now why I ended up giving it 4 stars. Let me check my review here and see if I mention why. No, I don't say why I got 4 stars. I think it got 4 stars just because it wasn't Kill Switch, and Kill Switch is like the best romance I've ever read of all time. I was hoping that it would be even better than Kill Switch, and it wasn't. It wasn't. It was like a step down from Kill Switch, and I think that's probably the only reason why I gave it 4 stars, because otherwise I just really, really liked it. There were some parts that got a little detail heavy and a little slow, but I think it's because Douglas was tying everything in from the previous books and tying up all the loose ends and that kind of thing, which was great. And I mean, she did that, and she did that well. It just got a little bit tedious at times. Yeah, but I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. I buddy read this with my friend Amy at Harboredinpages. Her channel is linked down below. We are going to buddy read the Christmas novella in December, which I'm really excited for that. I think it's called Fire Night. If you're a fan of dark romance, you have got to read this series. Like, hands down, my favorite dark romance of all time. It's top tier. There's nothing like it. It's amazing. So, wild card for MASH, romantic partner. Oh my gosh, Will Grayson is he's just perfection. He's not a perfect person. He's a broken person. But he's still perfection. Like, he's just, of all of the Devil's Night characters, that's my man. That's my man right there. Okay, that wraps up basically what I read in August and September. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them down below. And since this wrap-up was a pretty thriller-heavy wrap-up, if you just want to let me know you're here, go ahead and leave me the smiley emoji that goes... Until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink good coffee, take care of yourselves and each other.